I literally thought it was a hypo, and I'm like, welcome to Comics League Movie Night. I'm Jared. I'm here with Teladia and Robert. What's up, gents?
Hey,
not much. What up?
And
Welcome,
today
everyone.
we are discussing Green Lantern, Beware My Power. All right, this is the next movie in the Tomorrowverse. And, okay, so let's start with this. With this movie, it's one of those occasions where a movie is kind of hurt by the fact that it crams in too much stuff into one movie.
but without having the advantage of being the final, like Darkseid War had.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, or it's like being like a trilogy or something like that. That's a problem in there. Plus, I think my chief problem with this movie is that they kind of wasted Hal Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of all the, just so they can replace him with John Stewart, which is fine. I like John Stewart. He's cool.
I would say Kyle Stewart because he's pretty much Kyle Rayner mixed with John Stewart.
All right. So here's the funny thing about this. So we'll go off of that. There's a long history in DC animation of them giving other characters' origin stories to the current Lantern. They did this with Kyle.
Superman the animated series was given Kyle was given Hal's origin.
Yeah, in this. All right. So Teladia, do you know Kyle Rayner's origin?
Kyle Rayner was an artist, and
no, but do you know how he got the ring?
It came to him through a vent, and
no. All right. So what happened was, Hal became Parallax and basically killed all the Green Lanterns and the Guardians except for one.
Yep.
The Guardian showed up and said, "Okay, you're going to be the sole Green Lantern. Here you go." He just gave him a ring, but he gave him a more powerful ring that I believe didn't require charging.
Nope. I believe it did, but it didn't need his lantern was special, I believe.
Whatever. It didn't have the weakness to the yellow impurity.
Mm-hmm. So he wasn't told about it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how Kyle got this. And this is pretty much that, where, spoiler alert, this is basically Emerald Twilight, the animated movie. And hey, what's up, Cameron?
Truncating Zero Crisis. 0 hour.
Well, yeah, because we're not going to do Crisis until much later. So essentially, John Stewart is like a retired Marine Corps vet. He's walking and he gets he sees a spaceship crashed, and he gets given a ring, and the ring
a bit of Hal's origin too.
A bit of Hal's origin, and then they said, "You're going to be a Green Lantern. We need your help." So John ends up flying to the Justice League Watchtower, where we get the one reference to Earth 1 Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So we never see. That's the weird part, and that's the funny thing that Britt and I keep bringing up. The main Wonder Woman of the Tomorrowverse is just Earth 2. That's it. So I'm like, okay, that works. But anyway, so he shows up, and we see Martian Manhunter, Vixen, and Oliver Queen. And first off, Troy Baker voices a pretty good Oliver Queen.
Oh yeah, goes without saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I was not expecting Troy Baker to be in this.
Oh, and by the way, Teladia has been a member for 19 months. Hey, thank you, brother.
Uh-huh.
So, essentially, they like go, okay, so you have Hal's ring, and Hal, and they know enough about the Green Lanterns to know that you don't get the ring unless he's either dead or incapacitated. So they're like, okay, so we have to figure this out. They go to the Green Lantern ship and fly to Oa and find it wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of cool about this, that you could see like Easter eggs if you're paying attention. You know who certain Green Lanterns are, like Lyra, Boudica, like a lot of the lanterns that us Green Lantern like readers really know.
Yep.
So I'm like, I wish they weren't killed, but okay. Then you see like statues of Sinestro and Hal Jordan. Then they're attacked by Hawkgirl, and I'm like, you guys are really going to do the Justice League Unlimited pairing, which they end up doing later. And I'm like, okay, it's like, can we ever not have them paired together? But
be fair, I prefer those two over him and Vixen.
True. So then you get to, so they basically tell her, hey, don't kill us. We'll team up, and then we'll go find out what happened. So they go to this moon, where they meet Adam Strange. Now, okay, Robert, explain who Adam Strange is.
Adam Strange was an archaeologist who got plucked out from space by a Zeta beam, a transportation beam to the planet Ron, where he became their champion. Of course, later on, it would have been revealed, oh, it wasn't an accident. He was intentionally picked so he could actually, because the planet was going sterile, and they wanted someone fertile. The main scientist wanted him to knock up his daughter. That was an Alan Moore creation, and they took the ball and ran with that. But they did have a daughter, and in the DC shorts, which are tied into all the other shows, it turns out, all the other movies, the Tomorrowverse movies, he had been trapped, basically taking some element from King's Strange Adventures to a point. There was a big war going on. He got separated from them, but it's more the tone than it is the facts, more the tone of it. And basically, he's trying to do what he can to get back. And he finally, it takes forever, but eventually the Zeta beam was able to pick him up and send him back. Although as this shows out, he's still looking for his daughter. Yeah. And unlike King, he didn't give up his daughter.
Well, that adds up to an interesting fact. You know, it's kind of funny. King keeps writing stories about fathers that leave their kids.
Oh, geez, yeah, don't get me started. That was one thing that ticked me off so much about Strange Adventures, was the simple fact that he did that to his own daughter, who he loved more than anything.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, Robert, you and I've asked this, what's that say about King's home life? Because he keeps, like, self-inserting, so I'm like, are you trying to tell us something?
And yeah, I bet you he's also, but King, like Adam, probably convinced himself, oh, well, wait, I made sure she's taken care of.
But still, it's like, are you feeling trapped? But anyway.
But still, bringing it back to Green Lantern, because we're kind of going off track here. The way I felt like the beginning, it was like very interesting to see.
What's up, NJ?
To see John Stewart army. We've never seen
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. We've never seen that side of him in animation before.
We have.
Yeah, the animated series, and Justice League did at least imply it. They might not have put much emphasis on it, but
actually they kind of did. Remember when they go back in time into World War II?
Yeah.
He recognized stuff about the war, yeah.
But I mean, for example, like in a solo film or something.
Well, this was John Stewart's first solo film. Previous to this, he had never shown up in a solo film.
Exactly. Even in the stuff that were based off of scripts for Justice League and Justice League stuff like Christ on Two Words, they replaced them with Hal.
Right.
Yeah, because for those that don't know, originally when they came up with the story, Two Earths was supposed to be the lead-in to Justice League Unlimited. The thing is, at a certain point, they decided not to do that, and that's why the League is different, and that's why obviously the art style and everything like that is different.
But it was meant to explain why Martian Manhunter was gone and how Wonder Woman got her invisible jet.
Yeah, Barry Tevia says, yeah, this movie was, it's not necessarily bad. So we'll talk about that in a second. And NJ says, King also has a cheating fetish. Steve died and made out with a woman in the afterlife, and apology systemly cheated on Philip with Ares. I know, it's messy. But anyway, so, see, here's the thing. Okay, so they end up, I'm going to skip around for a bit to get to the main plot points, and then we'll go into like a more open discussion on this. Yes. So they get captured by Sinestro, who is great. The Sinestro stuff is actually really good in this, and Ken Jarreau, who's a old-time Justice League foe, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually really cool.
Yep.
Then they meet Hal Jordan. It turns out Hal was present at the testing of the Zeta beam thing, which is essentially a teleporter. We saw this in Young Justice, and he got teleported away. What you discover is that, so this is when I'm like, this is when it drastically like does a lot of weird stuff. Yep. So what you discover is that Hal is the bad guy the entire time. When Sinestro found him, he basically infected him with the Parallax entity, and then they went and destroyed the Green Lantern Corps and stuff. And that's when you get the recreation of the classic Hal Jordan cover where he has all the rings and stuff. Yeah, he's like, check out my bling.
Yep.
And there's a battle, and the thing about it is that then I will say the cool part about this is that John has to like learn why the core oath is like so important. Like when he first powers up, he's like, "In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight." But when he fights Hal Jordan, it's straight up like, "No, I believe in it now because you've shown me what it means to be a Green Lantern." And then Green Arrow kills Green Lantern,
which is right out of Zero Hour.
And I'm like, guys, come! You couldn't have at least
they wanted to reference Zero Hour. That's why they wanted to reference Zero Hour.
No, I know that, but I'm like, you couldn't have like spared Hal Jordan, like taken him captive. He didn't have the rings anymore.
Nope.
It's really odd. So then Adam Strange is like stops a Zeta Beam super weapon, and then the movie ends. So now I'm gonna start with this.
And we were left wondering if he died or not. Fortunately, it was later revealed in Crisis 3. No, he survived.
Yeah, exactly. So Teladia, since this was your pick, what made you pick this movie?
Well, we were on the tradition of the Tomorrowverse films. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, why don't we just cover this film? Considering we just done Superman, and I believe we did.
Yeah, we did JSA and Batman.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So I just thought, why don't we continue the tradition, right? Continue that trend and continue the flow of the Tomorrowverse. And what also interests me was the parallax thing, and I was just like, I want to talk about the parallax side of it. I want to see evil Green Lantern Hal Jordan. I really want to have a conversation about that, because like this was the first film I felt that you definitely saw a bad side to Hal Jordan, and I've never seen
film. Yeah, I think so. I think this was this was the first film where they actually adapted Emerald Twilight.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Teladia.
I was gonna say that, like, for me, it was like a first experience to kind of like have a conversation with you guys, to have like to talk about it, like how I felt about it. Because
by the way, I don't think you and I have ever talked about Green Lantern, Teladia, at all.
No, we've never talked about Green Lantern. It's always
no better time than today.
Yep.
No better time than today. So the other thing is, I will give this movie this. Seeing Adam Strange, it was really cool. He's a cool character. So I'll give you that. That was fun. And then Cameron says, your first Geo. This is the problem. This is like starting your DC animated movie universe with, like, say, Darkseid War or something like that. I'm like, you could have built up. I get that. Here's what people have to understand, though. At this point, they knew they weren't going to get many more movies.
The fact they jumped big time between Long Halloween and here, where there was no Justice League. Now there's a fully formed Justice League.
Well, they kind of hinted at it in the post-credit scene of Batman, where like Green Arrow and Flash show up. That would later get like built out in Crisis 1. But the thing about it is, like, I understand the reason why I kind of tolerate that. The reason why I kind of refute that, Chris, is that they didn't have time to like build it up. So they're probably like, let's just speed through this. Should they have done Parallax for their one Green Lantern movie? No. But no. I'm like, I get why they couldn't build up to it. They really didn't have, because remember, the JSA movies were supposed to be a movie series, which is basically called Wonder Woman and the JSA.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was supposed to be.
But when it comes down to, for me personally, I felt it was a very interesting story to tell.
Yeah. Right? No, I dug it.
I did too.
And I was just like thinking, I was just gonna say, I know it was the first Green Lantern film, like in a continuity wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that telling Green Lantern, John Stewart's story is very important compared to, we've seen Hal Jordan's origins in a previous animated films before, but we've never seen John Stewart's.
But we still haven't.
Still haven't because
This was
this is not John's actual comic book origin.
In fact, John and Guy had mundane origins.
That's why they kind of have to do that.
Why did they do that though?
Because it's more exciting. The Kyle and Hal origins are the more dynamic ones. They really are.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I get why they do that, and plus, here's the thing: like take Superman the animated series, they went with Kyle because here's the thing: at the time, Hal was dead. Hal Jordan did not.
And was still a villain too.
And he was still a villain too, so he wasn't like around. So they had to go with Kyle. But they realized we can't do Kyle's actual origin because then we would have to acknowledge that Hal Jordan exists in this universe. And if we want Kyle to be the first human Green Lantern, we can't do the Kyle.
Let's truncate his origin and mix it with Hal's.
Yeah, so I understood that because I'm like, plus they did that with Wally as well in the DCAU, so it's like, well, okay.
Eventually, Hal did show up in the DCAU and the Fatal Five.
Well, even before that, in the time traveling episode at the end of season,
I'm Hal Jordan. Okay, I'm up to speed.
Yeah, I love how like it's like McDuffie was like, it's Hal Jordan, don't ask questions.
I know, but he's like, my name's Hal Jordan. Okay, I'm up to speed because it took time to catch up. Like, okay, I'm up to speed.
Yeah, I agree with Don J, though, that First Flight is the best animated Green Lantern movie.
Barely,
yeah.
Because it itself was not that good.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Tevia says, it's just me, but if they wanted to tell the story, it could have been Hal and John Stewart team up. They could have. Yeah, that's what they could have done. But then again, they also I don't think they wanted to use Hal in future movies as well. So they're like, okay, let's just kill him off and replace him with John because that's what everyone else knows from DC animation when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then KHL Edit says, I coped so hard that my brain perceived this movie as a dream. Ah, God, that's great. I'm extremely happy because Green Lantern hasn't been in anything good. No, that's not true. He has been in good stuff. But it's like, so again, so let me tell you, this is what the movie does well. From a visual standpoint, they perfect, like with the rings thing. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. I like how they basically made Hal Jordan like a god when he's parallax. That's
which he was. He should be. He should be.
He should be because he's the strongest Green Lantern. And they even say that in this movie. I liked Hawkgirl. I felt like she was a real badass. I love her dynamic with Adam Strange because he's on the Ranian side and she's on the Thanagarian side.
Yeah, that tiny element of Ron Sonagar War.
Yeah, a tiny element of that. It was more like the backdrop of the movie. Yeah. I liked Sinestro. We also saw Lysa Drac, the like historian of the Sinestro Corps. So we know that Sinestro Corps War in some form has happened.
Yep.
We also have Ken Jarreau. I liked when Hal summoned his lantern ring and it went right through someone.
That was Despero. No, that was John that killed Despero. And boy, talk about a waste. They brought in some real dynamic characters and they wasted them just to be kill fodder.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. What do you want to say, Teladia?
I was going to say, for me, I'm not a Green Lantern fan. Like, don't get me wrong. But I just thought to have this conversation about Green Lantern because we've never done a movie night on a Green Lantern film.
Yes,
like
we
especially
have.
I mean,
I don't think you were here for that.
I mean, the continuity wise, though.
Oh,
meaning
in this one.
Yeah,
this has been the first like animated in continuity Green Lantern movie. Unfortunately, it's one that people don't necessarily enjoy that much. So that's the problem with this.
Isn't it a bit weird though that they've never done more Green Lantern films?
Because that's like that's a harder concept to do. It's not like which Green Lantern do you consider to be Atrocitus' arch enemy, like Sinestro is to Hal? That's a good question.
He really doesn't have one. No. Guy.
Gardner. I would say Guy Gardner. Yeah.
After Guy took over, definitely Guy.
And maybe Jessica.
Nah, not really.
Particularly with that Rebirth series. I'm basing off that.
That was more Simon.
It's still no. I would still say it's Atrocitus. That's what I say. It's my opinion.
All right, that's your opinion. You're right.
Let's see what else. So here, I think this movie's fatal flaw again is it's too much. because if they wanted to set up to like have this movie go until like expand and then end like the post credit scene is you find out about Parallax, that's one. But when you try and cram in too much stuff into that, I'm like, what? It's only a 90-minute animated movie. What are you doing here?
Right.
Cameron says also, who would have thought that? Who
No.
else thought Vixen? No, I hate that.
No, most people do not like it. The fact that even in the comics, and not the main comics, but even like Batman Beyond made it clear those two got together, and in the comics they revealed that yes, he was proposing to Vixen. Vixen got killed, and then he went back to Shayera.
But you know what? Also, I find interesting is the dimension Superman and Wonder Woman, but yet Wonder Woman was not in the Justice League yet.
Well, here's the thing. It's because they say that no, she was. Because if you notice in dialogue, they say, "Hey, where's Superman? He's on a mission with Wonder Woman." But I'm like, so we never see this Earth's version of Wonder Woman, because remember, the one in Crisis is the one from Earth 2, aka the JSA Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so I'm just like thinking, like, you know, I'm just like trying to think, like, where do you get this from?
I don't know. It's a weird thing, but it's like, all right, it's something. I'll give it that. But it's the other thing is, I'm like, the Justice League seems to get depending on how much time like jumps from like Batman to this, the Justice League gets set up really fast. Like they already have the Watchtower and all that, and I'm like, okay, but then again, you never really tell like how big of a time jump it is from this to Batman, from Batman to this. So that's why I'm like, that's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. But so what do you? So in terms of like of where this ranks in the Tomorrowverse movies, I'm going to tell you this: this is the weakest Tomorrowverse movie.
I have to agree with you in terms of that.
Really, come even more so than the Allegiant.
Yeah, and by the way, NJ, Wonder Woman has multiple animated movies.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the animated series as well, you have a point there. But
again,
but yeah, I understand that. But Wonder Woman has had at least 2 animated movies, so let's be fair about that.
She's also been in Justice League, Unlimited, and Super Friends.
She's been very prominent in a lot of animated series, so let's go with that.
Yeah, and Green Lantern only had 1 solo animated.
Yeah, and NJ's talking about Solo, but I'm like, yeah, she still had 2 animated movies. The only thing that Green Lantern has on her is an animated series, but that's it. And we've talked about the Wonder Woman animated thing.
Green Lantern's had 3 animated movies.
He has? What's the third one?
Emerald Knight.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh,
that's
that
true.
was an anthology, so that counts.
All right. So there is that, and you could technically count Justice Society World War II as a Wonder Woman animated movie. Yeah. Because that's what it is. She gets she and Flash.
MJ, you gotta remember this. Green Lantern got screwed anyway, so that's not really a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good example.
In terms of what other, like, because I know that, like, Teladia and I originally had our issues with the Justice League World movie. Here's the thing. That movie gets better when you watch Crisis, because Crisis expands a lot on, like, what the Crisis movies actually work better in terms of, like, elaborating on those plot points. And NJ, yeah, but it was still a Wonder Woman very prominent movie.
And she is like we said earlier, she's the prominent Wonder Woman of the Tomorrowverse.
Yeah, and it's like, when you look at it, Wonder Woman really was, once she got, like, introduced and she started appearing, she became the main character of the Tomorrowverse.
But yeah,
but yeah, it's like, because when you look at Warworld, because Teladia, I know you and I had some criticisms with Warworld. When you watch Crisis, the thing is, the Crisis parts each elaborated on what those other, like, Earths or depictions were, and, like, very coming back. So I'm like, once I saw that, I was like, oh, I get it now. Now, when you look at Warworld on its own, yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
No.
But in context of the other things, I'm like, context is key in that case.
And
what do you think, Teladia?
I agree with you. It's like it's in context of them having to go back to it. It makes sense. But
yeah, like her showing up in the cowboy Earth, and then she remembers, oh, okay, I was here for the cowboy thing, and I'm like, okay, I get it now. I get it. What do you want to say, Robert?
Yeah, and just to point out, by Warworld, they were locked in for Crisis because they already were having that planned out by Legion. Because Josie Campbell told me they knew Supergirl was going to be important for Crisis, even by that movie. Now they didn't have the plans for her being Harbinger or anything, but it was still they were already letting up the Crisis by that point.
And the thing is, I'm going to tell you this. It wasn't necessarily a James Gunn thing that this universe got cut off. What it was
panic. It was an uncertain factor. That's what she told me.
Yeah, because around the time that this was happening, I think that this was even happening before Gunn was even named. And they didn't, or at least he had just gotten named. They didn't know what they were going to do. So they're like, okay, as a precautionary measure, let's just end it.
Let's use it as a grand finale for all the animated in case we're not allowed to do anything more.
Yeah, because I get the feeling that Gunn maybe would have, in hindsight, allowed them to continue. But it's like, at the time, I get where they were coming from.
They shot the gun, jumped the gun.
There you go. Nice.
No, but mind you, I think there was a 10-year plan.
No, so, they truncated it.
There wasn't a 10-year plan. There was a lot because there wasn't enough movies to be a 10-year plan for the Tomorrowverse.
Right, no, but if you include because you remember, the part 3 is connected to the Dekamu. So
still, I don't think they plan at the Dekamu, because at that point, when Dark Apocalypse work came out, they said no, this is the end of the story.
Then they decided to connect it back, because let's be honest, there are still some holes with this theory, with what they did in Crisis. It's like, that there was, because they made it clear there was a multiverse in the prior DC animated movie universe, but then they said they treated it like there wasn't until Flash killed Darkseid, and it's like, you can't have it both ways.
But I know. But the thing what confuses me then is, if the multiverse is destroyed, how is Batman Yakuza still a thing then?
Yeah, no, but
that's separate.
But here's the thing. They addressed this because people were asking about like the Timverse getting blown up. They were like, no. It's just that universe's version of the multiverse.
Because remember, this is a multiverse with no Darkseid, meaning this was a DC anime universe that never had Darkseid.
Because remember, Darkseid exists outside the multiverse. It's not like there's multiple Darkseids.
Well, yeah, and in this case, they made it very clear this thing came about because Flash killed off Darkseid. So we had all these worlds, and so yeah, that DC animated movie and that DC animated universe we saw with Batman and Joker, that was one that had no Darkseid. So that was one. But I mean, plus
it tells you that here's how you know that it's not the Timverse. Look at the costume Batman is wearing. That wasn't the costume he had when Justice League was going on.
Yeah, he was back to the original Batman anime series design.
They were just doing this as like essentially a send off to that universe, but it wasn't blown up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a confusion people have, because I think a lot of people had a knee-jerk reaction to that. They're like, oh my gosh, they blew up the universe. They ruined my childhood. And I'm like, no, they didn't. You can literally go read that. You can literally go watch those DVDs.
Funny thing, you know what my headcanon was? That it wasn't Teen Titans that got blown up. It was Teen Titans Go. Because all we saw was the tower.
Yeah, and, you know, they also blew up the Super Friends.
It confused me. That's why I was like saying it was like confusing.
No, it was because they didn't tell you ahead of time. But essentially, what it was, from a creative standpoint, that's what they were doing. But from a story standpoint, they weren't doing that. If that makes sense.
Tevya, how is it that he dies? That sets. Okay, the whole point. What did you properly fully watched all the Crisis movies, Tevya? Because they explained it all there.
What we're gonna do, by the way, real quick, when it's time to do Crisis, because we're gonna do Crisis, we're gonna do it all as one stream. I'm not doing 3 streams.
No.
And what we'll do on the Discord is do a watch party where we watch all 3 parts as a community. I think that'll be fun. But anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, but basically, what we found out was when Constantine sent Flash at the end of Darkseid War to stop it all, what he ended up doing was causing him to go back and unwillingly kill Darkseid. That caused the multiverse to form. Again, like I said, doesn't make a lick of sense because they ignored Justice League War statement establishment, but still. And then basically, but it was a case, unlike a case where normally a multiverse would just splinter off and they're on different vibrational frequencies, but still stable. Here it was unstable. It was basically a multiverse being formed within a lone universe, and it was ready to burst.
Mm-hmm.
And thus the Anti-Monitors was a creation to stop it. It was like an antibody.
Yeah, essentially like that. It was kind of like
didn't make a lick of sense.
The way I kind of attribute it to, and the way they kind of explained it in the movie and Crisis, is that the Earth's forming was kind of like a disease, like a cancer, and then that was the antibodies trying to grow it up. I understand, and Tavia, I understand you were confused. We all were, so this is not you. And again, when we watch it, because here's the other thing, they explain that in 3 separate parts. Again, the problem with Crisis is that they split into 3 movies.
And this isn't even an adaptation at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
Hush was more of an adaptation of Hush than this was the Crisis.
Yeah, because until the end of Hush, it's basically Hush.
Yeah.
The way
now, granted, Long Halloween was a closer adaptation than Hush was.
Oh yeah, 100%. Now, the way I would have done Crisis is obviously I like this way. At least do it 2 movies, or the way I would have ended the Tomorrowverse and DC animation. The way you could have done this is do it where like actually do the ending of Crisis where all of the different Earths like unite, but do it. Only have 1 anti-monitor, and don't have him look like the automaton from the day the Earth stood still.
That is the worst looking anti-monitor. Green Lantern, the anime series, did it so much better, even though he was a robot.
Yeah, but still, this is the anti-monitor.
Mm-hmm. Or the other look.
Like the Darkseid War anti-monitor was one thing. And then you know what I would have done to end it? I would have had the ending battle so they can't beat the anti-monitor. So Barry goes back in time again and stops himself from killing Darkseid. So Darkseid shows up and fights the anti-monitor, and we get Darkseid War.
Now, here's the thing I would have said. Now, it's clear, technically 2 and 3 were the actual Crisis adaptation. 1 was trying to wrap up all the loose threads.
Yeah.
1 was more of a epilogue to everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 and 3 were the legitimate ones, and the worst part was the entire trilogy was done on the budget of 1 movie, and it shows badly.
Yeah, it's like that's why you have so many characters.
Cast members.
And you also have like a bunch of characters that just stand around and like don't say anything, but they're there because that way we can say we have that cameo, that cameo, that cameo.
Exactly. Like they had to save Matt Ryan for when he actually had a beefier role rather than waste him on the part when you only have 1 or 2 lines.
But I will say, it was a major mind F.
Yeah,
in a good way.
He was pariah and Constantine.
No. When I found out that it's all like one story, because I'm like, that part I think was done pretty well. Yes. When they linked it to the previous ones, I'm like, okay, that's actually really cool. I like that.
Although it feels like Constantine can never catch a break.
No,
first you have the House of Mysteries, during that compilation, where already he's torturing himself, even though he shouldn't have. He can't help it. And then you have this.
Actually, Teladia, did you watch that short?
No.
It was the second or the third or fourth. But it was one of the compilations of all the shorts. So the last one.
So what happens is in this, it takes place after Dark Apocalypse War. Constantine is like he's basically in a pocket universe.
A time loop too.
Yeah, and that the Spectre put him in. Now here's the thing. he's in this time loop. He's married to Zatanna. They have a kid and everything like that. But the kid and Zatanna's family keep killing him. And he's like, what's going on? The Spectre put me in this prison because of what I did with Barry. It turns out what he discovers is no, this was supposed to be like his heaven.
Yeah.
To like rest, he can have everything he wants. But John kept trying to escape and stuff. And
because he kept on wanting to be punished.
And then because of this, the Spectre just banished him and essentially put him on the Tomorrowverse Earth.
And be pariah.
And be essentially pariah. And now, Robert, for those of us that haven't read Crisis, who's pariah?
Pariah is a scientist he's the one that technically kickstarted everything. And the funny thing is, though, he was also the one of the smartest people to ever look back into the dawn of time. You know why? You know why, Jared?
Why?
Any other time someone looked back with a traditional monitor or whatever, it blew up. When Corona did it, it created the multiverse.
Yeah.
But what did he do? He made a sphere of antimatter. So he can go in there and observe it without any backlash.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, because it was a cube of antimatter, he ended up, the antimatter took advantage of it. And it turns out it basically sent out a wave of antimatter that destroyed everything except Pariah, his entire world. And because of that, what used to be a 50-50 even split became a 49-51 split. And thus the antimatter became slightly stronger. And from that point, was able to start eating away and outnumbering the Monitor. And because of that, the Monitor decided to use Pariah. He made it be where he will constantly jump to any world that's about to die, so he can follow him there.
So he's kind of like the Herald of Galactus in that sense.
But except without Galactus creating that Herald.
Yeah. NJ asked what happened in Crisis with Wonder Woman. So what happened is, so they created, essentially, it ended like the original Crisis did, where they created one Earth. There's no multiverse, just one Earth. And what happens is, so they built a wish machine, bringing in elements from Final Crisis.
Machine. Yep.
And Diana wished that everything would be done.
A sacrifice was needed. Was needed.
And what happened is, it was said that Diana wished that she wouldn't be immortal.
Yep. And because of that, she sacrificed her life and everything. And then anyone who went in there, they merged. Even if they went in separately, they would eventually merge into one amalgam version.
And they probably would not remember what came before. It was
Obviously not.
Essentially, it's a hard reboot. So what this sets up is, if they want to do another universe, they can technically link it to this.
But it's more final than what Darkseid War did.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, oh, what's this Flashpoint thing? So there you go. So that's kind of what that is. It's them undoing the immortality thing.
You know, it's funny that technically people look at Flashpoint Paradox as being that universe is technically the DCAU. Some people have theorized. And because we never actually saw that universe beforehand.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Some people have theorized that. I don't buy it.
The way I theorize it is that the Flashpoint Paradox before they reboot, that's like, so in other words, because
it's some variation, but not it.
No, the way I kind of take it is that all of the DC like original animated movies are in one continuity. They just never referenced, and then Flashpoint rebooted all that.
I don't buy that because some of those do not click, and you had some that were Elseworlds too.
No, but I'm saying the ones that were in Elseworlds, for the most part, you could take them as one continuity because a lot of them build off each other. Case in point, Public Enemy and Teladia, you and I talked about this when we covered it.
Oh yeah,
Public Enemies to Apocalypse and all this. I'm not saying that like they have to reference each other. It's just because they don't, you can take them as one universe.
Now, funny thing is, did you know that the writer on both Public Enemies and Apocalypse, he actually did want to continue adapting the Superman Batman stuff. He really wanted to do the third story where the Legion of Supervillains, at least Lightning Lord, Cosmic King, and Saturn Queen, abducted, Superman, Batman, made them despots. He really wanted to adapt that, but Apocalypse bombed.
Yeah, there you go. Hal Jordan says, hey, Jared, just passed by to say hi to answer this question. Yes, this movie had a lot of room for improvement. Yeah, it did. And what's up, Hal? It's been a while.
I agree with Cameron on that one. That I can agree with. Crisis on Two Earths
real
and
quick,
Doom.
the only movie I thought it did can't define was Suicide Squad. Well, yeah, that one definitely did.
That's where it confirmed that the entire world was the spinoff from Flashpoint.
Yeah, I also thought Crisis on Two Earths and Doom were in the same universe as
I
Paradox.
can agree to that one because it's a variation of the DCAU, but not exact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of that. Yeah, I would say that. Like I would say Crisis Part 2, Justice League Doom. Yeah, actually, yeah, those two I think are, and then the art style change.
Fatal 5 is completely not.
Yeah. Fatal 5 was 100% connected to the actual DCAU.
Even though it wasn't initially meant to be. All these ones that tied up into it were never initially meant to.
Yeah, exactly.
It just happened to, with that one being the most likely.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
I'll be right back. I'm switching to my phone.
All right, now back to Green Lantern. So, Teladia, how do you rate this movie out of 10?
I think it's a 6 out of 10.
I'd say that's fair. It's not as horrible as people say it is. It's not the best. Let me put. We've seen way better Green Lantern movies. So, Robert, how would you rate Green Lantern: Beware My Power out of 10?
Out of 10, I give it a 7.
We gave it a 6.
Oh, then yes, 6 actually.
It's because it's above average, but it's not great.
No, and I said by comparison alone, First Flight is better, but First Flight was not good.
I'll give First Flight like a 7.5.
Because you know why? It was training day. And I really did not like how Sinestro was just corrupt in general because of that parallel to training day. I'm like, no, he should not be crooked in that regard. He should be crooked in the more so like, I'm tired of being shackled.
Well, he did. That was his motivation.
Well, yeah, okay, you're right there. You're right. It's just something didn't feel right. It's all
okay, and that's fine. Yeah, exactly. It's not. Let me put it this way. It's been a while. The best Green Lantern animated thing is probably Emerald Knights.
By comparison, yes.
Like that one I give an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. The animated series is straight up a 10 out of 10.
Oh, that's still one of the peaks of the DC animated project.
Fun fact, written by Jeremy Adams. No wonder the Green Lantern series is so good.
And with Bruce Timm as one of the main producers, not just an executive producer.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, all right. And I do like how they started to canonize a lot of stuff from that show, like Razor. And you know what's kind of funny? The way they kind of played it, technically the Green Lantern animated series is canon to Young Justice because Razor shows up and says, hey, Kilowog, say hi to Hal for me. I'm like, okay, that works.
And Justice League Action also ties because Aya showed up in the taxi.
Okay, that works. Wait, does that mean that the anti-monitor of the Young Justice universe is just a Terminator robot?
Ooh.
I'm like,
It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
If I get Jeremy Adams on the show, I am going to ask him, okay, what was the deal with what it probably is? They wanted to have like a giant threat, and they didn't want to have to do the multiverse stuff for this show, so they're like, let's just make
Kevia's right too. Kevia's right about that too.
He was in that.
Razor basically confirming that it was that Beware My Powers in some variation of maybe not Beware My Power, but at least that world existed within this multiverse.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you that. So that's actually really cool. So as for how I would have done this movie, because now we're gonna go around and talk about how we would have improved it. Again, cut out the parallax stuff, tease that for a sequel, assuming that we could get sequels to this.
Right.
Cut out parallax, set that up. You could still have like all of the setup, but have it be actually revealed at like a post-credit scene that's what happens. Like maybe Hal breaks out Sinestro or something like that. And I would say don't necessarily... What I have in what I keep the Rand Thanagar War? Yeah, kind of, because you kind of need that to like for like the background of this. And I do like, by the way, real quick, another thing I forgot to mention, how this basically is kind of like Hard Traveling Heroes. So I'm like, oh, okay, that actually works out really well in Byron Teladia. So Hard Traveling Heroes was a series where Hal and Oliver went around, took a truck and went around
Where's
America.
the Guardian?
It's what establishes that they are like really close friends.
This was before. Was this before or after the the Denny O'Neil stuff? I keep forgetting.
I think this was the Denny O'Neil stuff.
Oh, but I'm saying before or after the whole what have you done for the black skin and all that.
It was during that, because that was like the first issue.
The funny thing, there's a major retcon with that era. You know why?
Why?
The Guardian that travels out was not Gansett like people of retcon. It was Appa Aliapsta, the Guardian who would become the Mad Guardian at the start of Gerard Jones's era.
Yeah, and by the way, here's what the trade looks like. It's written by Denny O'Neil
and
it's drawn by Neil Adams. Really great stuff. There's also one where they bring in that like Green Arrow's sidekick is a drug addict.
My ward's a junkie.
Yeah, I know. And
that was
really cool.
They knew because it was such a low-selling thing, or because it was a backup in Green Lantern and everything, they could get away with a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really great story to like get like, because here's the thing, that's a book that does politics really well, because they show both sides of the argument and both sides learn, and that's the way you do it, because not once does it make Hal or Oliver seem like an idiot.
Exactly. And for example, even with the whole what have you done for the black skin? I mean, I know people mock and say, maybe save Earth on a regular basis, but like that's not what they're saying.
Yeah, they're acknowledging that, but it's like you can also work on like solving all these other issues.
They're more grounded. Basically, it's more of a case of you mostly deal with cosmic stuff. What about the grounded stuff?
Yeah, because yes, you are like the hero of all of Sector 2814, but you're also the hero of Earth.
Exactly.
Which I definitely understand that. Cameron says, would you guys give Hal his Captain Kirk persona? It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Where did that come from? Where'd that come from? Even
you know what it comes from? Britt showed me this, because she originally thought he was like this Playboy that stepped around. It came from like the DC AMU when they have Hal trying to get women's numbers and hitting on them.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that is not Hal at all. Hal is always loyal to Carol.
No.
Modern Hal is.
No. Those two had a rocky relationship, and when they separated, he honored that a lot of times. He at least didn't upset.
I'm saying modern. I said modern.
Okay, well, I'm saying you have people like Cowgirl.
But still, it was like he was still into her because she wasn't really into him at the time.
That's true. Well, yeah, because she was technically married and then got divorced.
Yeah, exactly. You know, as soon as he got divorced, as the divorce happened, bye Cowgirl.
Which was a shame.
Nah, I prefer him.
Oh no! I prefer him with Carol. I just meant I wish it was handled better than just phasing her out.
My point is, post-crisis Hal has always, at the very least, been like pointed toward Carol, despite what Grant Morrison would want you to believe.
No, Grant didn't really do that either. It was a case where there was a mess. The relationship with Hal and Carol was a mess by Grant stuff. I'm sorry, it was. That was one of the downsides of the Vendetti Jensen era. It was a mess.
Well, also, but the other thing, it's like when you go to like the other issue is that's when Grant tried to say that Hal was like pansexual. That's the other thing.
He loved the ring.
That's the other part where people thought he was the Captain Kirk because Grant said stuff like that, and I'm like, that's not in any. I respect you, Grant. That is in no way true.
I would say this. I could see some Kirkness in Hal.
Some of it, like the jokester space guy, but
the
sleeping
guy who fights against the authority when it feels like we'll break the rules if he feels like Now the rules need to be broken for this. I'm sorry.
But the sleeping around, that is not Hal.
No.
That has never been Hal.
No. Again, he's loyal unless they're not, but he respects Carol if they're broken up. He's not the type who would, again, like I said, he's not the type who would end upset, like, come on, babe, get back. He's like, no, he's like, okay, I screwed up. If we get back together, it happens. If not, I'm not going to force her.
I mean, no, Guy makes sense to be the sleeping around guy, comparatively.
Except he's loyal to Ice.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Vendidia, reminds me, did you get a sequel? If we were to get a sequel, would you bring in Relic? No.
Relic?
Who's Relic?
Relic was the he was the guy who basically was a lot like Galactus. Came from a previous time universe, and this was the whole when Vendidia was trying to claim, oh, the emotional spectrum, it's a limited reserve.
No, come on.
No.
And that it was running out due to the War of Light.
That is stupid. I'm sorry, that is dumb. It's like people are gonna run out of willpower.
No. It basically saying he was trying to say, and unfortunately, this was one of them, a case of him not knowing. Say what you want, Venditti. He will at least be honest. He relied on the editors, and the editors took advantage of the fact this was a undefined stuff with the New 52. Like he heard, oh, there's a source wall. Hey, what if the emotional spectrum tapped into the source energy? If that drains, all of reality falls apart. And the editor said, sure, let's go with that. Because it's it's the New 52. We don't have it established.
Yeah, but then they try and tell you that like Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run is canon. So it's like, yeah, we do have it established.
Yeah, again, it's the double-edged sword of everything.
That's the thing. It's like, as much as I love the New 52, that was the main issue with it, is that they try to tell you nothing's canon unless you're a Green Lantern fan and a Batman fan. But the problem with that, it's like, wait a second. So you're telling me Blackest Night and Sinestro Corps War happened, but no one references it?
Exactly.
What? If it were all the space events, like if they said that like the space parts of those events happened, but not the Earth stuff, that's one thing. That one I could buy.
I still remembered. They obviously Gordon, the show that he was younger, went back to red hair. But then eventually when he was gray, they said, I stopped dyeing my hair. Barbara told me to stop dyeing my hair.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they use that to acknowledge, oh yeah, he was red again. Oh, he just dyed it.
Yeah, exactly.
I did like that as an explanation.
So I think that's a good place to leave it. Yeah, this movie.
Wait, I didn't get a chance to. I don't think I got to answer about what we would have done.
Yeah,
go on.
Go ahead.
Well, for one, I look at it in two ways. If I was allowed, if it was a done in one, or if I had the potential for a sequel.
Yeah.
The potential for a sequel, a lot of what you suggested was fine. If I was to keep it self-contained, I would have it be that, and if we were still going by the limited budget, which they clearly had. So in other words, just keep the characters that were there. I would keep, there was a lot I would have kept, but then I would have had a redeemed Hal at the end.
Yeah,
that's the other one thing I would have changed, would be to redeem Hal, but have him give up for Go the Ring at least. He's like, I got to earn it back.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that one.
I think that alone could have salvaged it.
Yeah, exactly. How about you, Teladia?
The one thing I would have done is I wouldn't have killed off Hal Jordan at the end.
Like
I would have imprisoned him until he's rehabilitated, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would have done.
Well, the thing is, Teladia, he would be instantly rehabilitated the moment Parallax was stripped from him.
So yeah, strip the Parallax thing. That's really what you could do for that.
Yeah.
But NJ says, do you consider the Red Lanterns evil? No.
Not inherent. No, Guy proved it. Guy proved they can be a force for good. It depends on who's leading them.
Yeah, it's just like, and NJ actually summarized them perfectly. They're victims of injustice and cruelty of life, it's not like yellow, black, or orange, because there can be righteous anger.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you, NJ. Don J says, at least Green Lantern got a game for the PS3 tied into the movie. That's true. There's not like a lot of DC games outside of Batman. But anyway, I think that's a good place to leave it. So tonight for Comics League at 9 p.m., Britt and I will be going live to compare Super Wonder to Spider-Man and Mary Jane. So be on the lookout for that. And Wonder Woman Wednesday, I'm going to take my good friend Pomegranate's suggestion again. I am going to be talking about, essentially going to be talking about Steve Trevor and compare him to the way he's been portrayed in like the Perez run, the Golden Age Wonder Woman and such. Essentially say, here's where he has been done well and here's why he's been doing crappily.
And I would say this, can I make a suggestion for that?
Sure.
Separate King Steve with any other new, like Rebirth, New 52 Steve before him. Like, just treat King Steve as a completely separate entity altogether.
Oh, he's going to get his own talking point. Yeah.
All right. I'm next, right?
Okay, fine. Go. Yeah, go ahead.
To pick the movie.
Yeah. You should be.
Return of the Cape Crusader. The Adam West animated movie.
That works. All right. So Return of the Cape Crusader is next movie night. Actually, Robert, since we're on you, where can we find you and what have you got coming out on your channel?
Check the link down below. Pro Teaches Noobs. Just celebrate Pika Shade's 100th lesson. Also be starting. I've been streaming The Last of Us. I'll be getting back to that probably tomorrow, and that's pretty much it.
Teladia, how about you, my good sir?
You guys can check me out on YouTube at Teladia Plays and X at Teladia Plays _Wagger. Coming up on my channel is I will be having on my channel Luke Bug, the Geek of Steel, for Into the Multiverse DC Comics podcast, and I'll be doing some Marvel Rivals content. I'll have to figure out. I'm gonna work on the thumbnail, make it fancy, and then you guys will have a stream sometime next week. And then I'll also be doing some other things too.
Heck yeah! Stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. Steve Trevor, Steve Never. She belongs to General Zod. He belongs 6 feet in the ground. Zoe is the Max about for life. We'll see you later. Real quick. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight.
Let those who worship evil's might
beware my power, Green Lantern's light. See you later, everybody.